Good morning. Let's sing a morning song together. We're in the Gray Hymn Book, hymn number 127. And this particular hymn, the lyrics in our hymn book come from a much longer poem by William Blake, Can I See Another's Woe? They're great words, set to an old hymn that has a little bit of a sad feel to it. But I think in the topic today, complacency, heart-wrenching, painful, holy work. This hymn just cried out to be sung, but it doesn't seem like the stand up and shout morning song. So let's stay seated to sing it. There's a blog called Notes from the Far Fringe, where a minister has gone through every hymn in our hymn book and commented on them. And on this hymn, at the end of her comments, she said, "This hymn and the much longer poem are intended to swell the mystic chords of memory by the better angels of our nature." Swell the mystic chords of memory by the better angels of our nature. So let's see if we can bring those together in our morning song. Can I see another's woe and not be in sorrow too? Can I see another's grief and not seek for kind relief? Can I see a falling tear and not feel my sorrow share? Can a father see his child weep, nor be with sorrow fear? Can a mother sit and hear infant groan and infant fear? No, no, never can it be. Never, never can it be. Thank you for singing.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Olympia Unitarian Universalist congregation. Our community envisions an interconnected world that is loving, just, and healthy. We commit to live out our mission to welcome and wonder, embrace and empower, bridge and become. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Liz Clement. I use she and they pronouns, and I am a member of our worship arts team. Leading worship with me today is Troy Fisher, our music director, along with our friend Karen Gorgiou, our Reverend Sarah Lewis, Director of Community and Faith Development, and we are so glad to welcome back Roddy Bell-Shelton Biggs, a Unitarian Universalist, Seminarian, and aspiring public theologian, who again joins us remotely today to share their experience. A few things to know about the service today. We're streaming live on Zoom and YouTube, and the service is being recorded. For those here in the sanctuary, you can see subtitles up here on the screen, if those are helpful to you. We're a multi-generational community, and we value our young ones. Kids, babies, and teens are welcome in the sanctuary at any time. We're all welcome wherever's comfortable for us in the building. We've got fluffy chairs up front so you can be comfortable, and we've got even more comfortable bean bags too. I highly recommend them. There's also nursery care and a story time program for children in the classroom wing, if that sounds good to you. We're grateful for the many hands that helped make worship happen this morning. Thank you to all who contribute in so many ways. After the service, everyone will have the chance to discuss reflection questions offered by our guest. For those online, we invite you to go into a breakout room after the service for a virtual coffee chat to check in. For those in person, please feel free to stay for coffee in the Commons, or you can connect in here if that's more comfortable for you too. There are many things happening at Olympia UU. Check out the Tuesday update on the website for more information. Now, let us open our hearts and minds as we prepare for worship. Welcome, everyone. It is so good to be together. This morning, we join Unitarian Universalist congregations around the world in lighting a chalice, the symbol of our faith tradition. If you are online and have a chalice or candle with you, please join us as we light our chalices together with these words from Vance Bass. Every day brings struggle. Every day brings joy. Every day brings us the opportunity to ease the struggle of another, to be the joy in another's life. May this flame remind us to carry our light to each other and to the world.
Good morning, beloveds. Our opening words this morning come from the Reverend Gretchen Haley. She writes, "Every little thing that breaks your heart is welcome here. We'll make space for it, give it due time and praise. For the waiting it represents, for the longing for something more, and some healing hope that remains, not yet. We promise no magic, no making it all better, but offer only this circle of trust, this human community that remembers, though quite imperfectly, that sings and prays, though sometimes awkwardly, this gathering that loves, though not yet enough. We're still practicing after all, still in need of help and partners, still becoming able to receive all the beauty and all these gifts we each can bring. Come, let us worship together.
And let's sing together again out of the Hill Hymn Book, hymn number 1027, this beautiful, beautiful hymn originally written in Spanish. And if you wanted to, you could sing it in Spanish, but we're going to sing it in English, and the two would mix together. Let's rise in body and our spirit and sing together.
Still are giving, when the thirst Good morning. Once upon a time, there was a tiny, itsy-bitsy, teeny-weeny, very small god named Tiny. Now, Tiny was not a very powerful god, definitely not a famous god, and let's face it, she was a little jealous of all the attention that other gods got. And so she wanted to find like a spark of a great idea, something that would make her famous and well known. And the idea that she came up with is this: you are not alone. That would be her message. Tiny went all around the world and went to people, and in a very small voice that only they could hear, she said, "You are not alone." And people loved it. People loved hearing, "You are not alone. You are not alone." Until one day, Tiny said this to a person who reacted a little differently. Miriam, when Miriam heard, "You are not alone," she wasn't immediately comforted. In fact, she was a little disturbed, a little agitated. Something seemed to her to be a little off about the idea. And she thought about it all night long. And then the next day, as she was reading the morning paper, she found herself, instead of just skimming through it, really connecting to every story in the paper and thinking about this. You are not alone. And then she started to cry. She's like, I am not alone. I am connected to all of these people and all of this going on in the world. I am not alone. And so I need to help. Tiny was surprised. No one else had reacted this way. Tiny hadn't thought about it that way. So Tiny decided to keep watching Miriam and see how this developed. And Tiny saw, as Miriam was in a meeting with a colleague and they were talking about a law that they wished the Senate would pass, and that very night Miriam wrote a letter to her senator. And Tiny was also watching as Miriam did the grocery shopping and threw a few extra items in the cart and delivered them to a housebound neighbor along with a nice little note on their porch. And Tiny was also watching as Miriam walked her dog and picked up some extra trash that wasn't hers as she went. Tiny watched all of this, and then one night, someone called Miriam, who hadn't reached out for a long time, an old friend who was having a hard time. And as he was talking to Miriam on the phone, he started to cry. And Tiny saw Miriam settle into a comfortable chair, sit back, and say, "Take your time. There's no rush. You're not alone. I am here." And Tiny thought, oh, there's the second half. You are not alone. I am here. Tiny was inspired by the example of Miriam with her hands and her heart and her spirit reaching out to others. And Tiny thought, I will pass this message on. Inspired, she went to work, not just here and there telling people, but going everywhere, all the time. You are not alone. I am here. You are not alone. I am here. It became like a murmur, an echo. You could hear it. Repeat after me and make that echo, would you? You are not alone. I am here. You are not alone. I am here. A murmur across the whole world. And that's why there's no statues or busts of Tiny. Tiny didn't become famous, but in fact was just like the breeze, was everywhere. And it could be heard. It could be heard when people left water in the desert for others who would be thirsty. You could hear, you are not alone, I am here. It could be heard at the bedside of a dying person, you are not alone, I am here. It could be heard in the jailhouse and the sanctuary, You are not alone. I am here. Separate and together, it could be heard. You are not alone. I am here. May it be so.
Faith is a forest in which doubts play and hide. Insight can hear the still small voice deep inside. Web of life, may this thread I weave. Strength and commitment in all I believe. Vision be my guide as I seek my way. Lead me into this tender day. Speak through me in all I do and say.
Each Sunday, we express our gratitude by joining together in service to our community and to something greater than ourselves. The offering collected here does two things. It supports the ongoing work of Olympia UU, which is also supported by your regular pledges. It also supports an organization that serves our community in harmony with our Unitarian Universalist values. Our Share the Plate organization for July is Hockey Farmers Collective. This is what they share about their work. Hockey Farmers Collective seeks to bolster and reincorporate traditional and inherently sustainable farming knowledge that is present in our migrant and indigenous communities. By holding close decolonization frameworks, Hockey seeks to encourage our intersecting Black, Indigenous, and immigrant peoples to reclaim life-giving knowledge of truly sustainable foodways and plant medicine creation. You can participate in the offering by making a donation online through the church website or by texting the number that will appear on your screen. You can also mail a check to Olympia UU or place your offering in one of the baskets that will be passed by the ushers. May the offering now be generously given as it is most gratefully received.
I will bring a cup of water. Here's the best that I can offer. In the dusk of coming night, there is evidence of light. With the pattering of rain, let us bow as if by grace. Consider all the ways we heal and how a heart can break. Abide with me where it's breathless and it's empty. Yes, abide with me, and we'll pass the evening gently. Stay awake with me, and we'll listen more intently to something wordless and remaining, sure and ever-changing in the quietness of now. Let us ponder the unknown, what is hidden, what is whole, and finally learn to travel at the speed of our own souls. There is a living water, a spirit running through, always changing, always making all things new. Abide with me where it's breathless and it's empty. Yes, abide with me, and we'll pass the evening gently. Stay awake with me, and will listen more intently to something wordless and remaining, sure and ever changing in the quietness of now. There are things I cannot prove, and still somehow I know it's like a message in a bottle that some unseen thing has thrown. You don't have to be afraid. You don't have to walk alone. I don't know, but I suspect that it will feel like home. Abide with me where it's breathless and it's empty. Yes, abide with me, and we'll pass the evening gently. Stay awake with me, and we'll listen more intently to something wordless and remaining, sure and ever changing in the quietness of now.
Thank you all for your generous gifts, and thank you for the beautiful music. We came together this morning bringing all that is in our lives. Let's open our hearts to the complexity of life as we place stones in the water of community. You will hear a drum beat as we share today. It brings into our awareness that our individual hearts beat, and together we create the heartbeat of community. Right now, I invite you to take a breath as we open our hearts to receive the complexity of all that is in our lives and our communities today. For those online, I invite you to share from your heart by entering in the chat. Those in the sanctuary can see your sharing on the screen. And for those in person today, I invite you to come forward if there is something that you would like to bring into this community. You may place a stone into the water as you hold your sharing in your heart. Please come up through the side aisle and return by the center aisle. Let us hear the heartbeat of our community and reach out our hearts in love and care to all who share. we place a stone in the water for all that has been shared online, shared from the heart. And one more stone in the water for all that we hold in our hearts and that remains unspoken.
Take a deep breath, dear ones. Finish arriving in this moment, in this place you find yourself, in the sanctuary, at home, on the couch, in bed, maybe traveling along the road. Wherever it is, it's made holy by your presence, by this community's presence, and by the beauty of the day that's unfolding right before you. Take a moment for yourself. Dance in the glory. Dance in the light. Dance in the shadows, knowing that we are all connected all the way back to the ancestors who now watch over.
You will find, you will find, you will find me there, dancing in the shadows. You will find, you will find, you will find me there, where light meets the dark. You will find, you will find, you will find me there, dancing, dancing in the shadows, shadows of lives past away, shadows of pain held near. You will find, you will find, you will find me there, dancing in the shadows, shadows of ancestors dear. Yes, you will find me there, dancing. Dancing in the shadows.
Seeds of both meek and strong are scattered in air. Dignity shines undimmed by bigotry's glare. Web of life, may this thread that I weave help me be witness to all I believe. Justice be my guide as I seek my way. Lead me into this tender day. Speak through me in all I do and say.
Mhm. So this time last summer, I was serving as an intern hospital chaplain at a level 1 trauma center in the hills of East Tennessee at Johnson City Medical. Serving as a hospital chaplain is a requirement for all of those going into UU ministry, set forth by the UUA, the Unitarian Universalist Association, and the MFC, or the Ministerial Fellowship Committee, the group that ultimately clears Unitarian Universalist people who are seeking ordination for that ordination, which lies in the hands of the congregations to ordain. So as my time as a chaplain, there are so many stories that could be shared, ones that broke my heart and ones that were filled with immense joy. I could talk about the time that I provided care for a colleague of mine, another Unitarian Universalist minister's mother, and her, as her father died quickly and unexpectedly coming out of heart surgery. Being the chaplain on call, running to the room, knowing whose room it was, to be there as her father took her last breaths, to be present with her mother in tears, who had just lost her husband, unable to, and rightfully so, be able to get a sentence out, to call her daughter, my friend and colleague, who was not there, who was caring for her younger child and other people's children at the time. So, being the chaplain on call, I called and told my friend that her father had passed. So, if nothing else, chaplaincy is heart-wrenching, holy, painful, and spiritual work that leaves one to explore and make meaning of human suffering, while believing in and praying to and questioning everything that we know or think we know about the very essence of all that is named and perceived as holy. The Christian scripture and the text of Romans chapter 5, verse 3 and verse 4 encourage that we seek glory in suffering. For we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance character, and character hope. And in Buddhism, in one of the Buddha's first teachings, monks are reminded of the nature of stress and suffering. The Buddha spoke, and the monks listened. The Buddha said, "Now this, monks, is the noble truth of stress. Birth is stressful. Aging is stressful. Death is stressful. Sorrow is stressful. Separation from the loved is stressful. Not getting what you want in life is stressful. Association with the unbeloved is stressful. In short, one thing in life is certain: there will be stress and there will be suffering. And one thing in chaplaincy is certain: chaplaincy is indeed heart-wrenchingly, holy, painful, spiritual work. As a chaplain, the daily call comes to be in the presence of and to care for those in the middle of their suffering, their stress, their sorrow, their lamentations, their pains, their uncertainties, and sometimes their great joys. Chaplains are called to bear witness to moments of new birth, aging, life-altering traumas, a devastating new cancer diagnosis, and to be present when someone takes their final earthly breath before crossing the rainbow bridge. There are those moments in chaplaincy when one feels that the Great Spirit is calling them to provide care for their children. I had many of those moments during my summer as a hospital chaplain, but the one that I choose to share with you today is that of being called in to the room of a young trans man of age 24 and to provide care for him. As a chaplain, one of the things that we are tasked with doing is to create a verbatim account of what happens, to gather all the information, to compile a report as best word for word as we can remember. It's not always easy, especially when the conversation is heavy. What I'm going to share with you today is a part of that conversation, and it is heavy. So if you need to get up, move around, maybe dance a little, or leave the space that you are in, take care of yourself. So in the afternoon, soon after finishing lunch, I received a phone call in the chaplain's office from the nurse who was attending the emergency room mental holding cells. He called and said there was a young person who had expressed that they might be interested in visiting with a chaplain. He mentioned that this patient had some suicidal ideations and a complicated history, and that this could indeed be a challenging visit. Seeing how I was just finishing with lunch, I let the nurse know that I'd be down in about 5 minutes. I finished lunch and made my way down to the emergency holding unit. Once there, I checked in with the nurse, asked if there was anything else I should know before going into the room. This is where he shared with me that the patient was trans, that the patient had suicide ideations, that the patient, who we'll name as Tony, had swallowed an object that brought him to the emergency room, and that swallowing that object was an attempt to take his own life. This is when the nurse also informed me that another member of the staff was being less than welcoming to Tony, refusing to use his chosen name and his pronouns, referring to him only by the legal name and pronoun markers on their record. I thanked the nurse and made my way to the room, but before going in, overheard a conversation. The other nurse, who the previous had told me about, was referring to Tony in ways that were less than welcoming. I could do one of two things. I could choose to ignore it and go into the room as called, or what I did, choose to address this nurse and say, you know, the patient is trans. We all do. Their name is Tony. They use he, him pronouns. Can we respect that? And without waiting for a response, turned and went into the room. When I got into the room, I had to do a very quick assessment, one for my safety and for his, and also just to know what state he was in. I noticed that he was rocking back and forth, that tears had been coming from his eyes, that he had a smile-like expression across his face. He made eye contact as soon as I walked in. Upon entering, I noticed that he was sitting cross-legged on the only piece of furniture, if you can call it furniture, in the room, a blue cot. There was nothing else there. So, into the room I went, making eye contact, opening the door, moving closer, before saying, "Good afternoon, Tony. My name is Roddy. I'm one of the chaplains here. Would you like a visit?" "Yes, please," he said. I could really use one, and invited me to sit next to him. I looked around again, remembering that it was the emergency holding unit of the mental health side of the hospital, but not feeling any real concern for my safety or his. I looked over to the door and motioned to the nurse that I was going to sit down. He nodded, and so I sat within range of the window and close enough to Tony that it didn't seem like I was hovering over him or didn't want to be near him. So we had a conversation, and that is what I share parts of with you. So I sat down and asked Tony, "So, how are you feeling today?" "Not good, I'm afraid, uncomfortable, and unsure I want to do this anymore," he says. There's a pause, and he looks around as he starts to rock. I swallowed a pen, and I'm feeling very alone and suicidal. I think I want to die. He stops rocking for a moment and makes eye contact. Then he asks a profound question, one that I was not ready nor expecting to hear come out of his mouth. Is it a sin to take one's own life? I've been told all my life it's a sin, but I don't know. I took a very long and deep breath. How to respond to such a heavy, to such a pointed question? I hear you saying that you're feeling alone and suicidal, and that you think you would like to die. And I hear you saying that you're unsure if it's a sin to take your own life. Is that correct? I ask. Tony nods, no words, and resumes rocking. Well, do you believe it's a sin, Tony? You say you don't know. Would you mind telling me more about why you're unsure and what sin looks like for you in your life today? Well, I mentioned before, Tony says, I've been told it was a sin all my life, but I'm unsure. I'm unsure because I don't even know if I believe in sin. At least if I do believe in sin, not like that. The sin would be the suffering afflicted onto me, the hurt, the abuse, the pain, you know. Not that I am hurting so much so to the point where I don't want to live anymore, that I might kill myself to escape the suffering. Does that make sense? Tony asked. I don't think any of it makes sense, as tears rolled down his face. Yes, Tony. Yes, that makes sense, I say. And I'm so sorry that you have known such suffering. Would you like to share some of what that suffering for you in your life has looked like? He stops rocking for a moment, and a smile, a small smile, comes across his face. He seems happy to be asked such a question, and I am left to wonder, has no one asked this young man about his life? Has no one cared enough about him to seek to understand why he's there in the first place? I ask him, or I remind him, please know that I do not wish to do you any harm. So please share only what you feel comfortable with sharing. You don't have to, but I'm here if you want to share. Just for some context, a typical chaplain visit lasts about 20 minutes. Yet, there are those that spirit needs a little longer to work out. And this was one such visit that lasted just shy of an hour. We had a wonderful conversation, uncovering and working through so much trauma and pain. And I will not share with you all that was shared, but I will say that it was truly heartbreaking, so much so that I began to wonder if Tony had ever had a joyous moment in their life. After Tony shared their sacred burdens, I affirmed his sharing and did my best to move the conversation to joy.
Fortune and famine ride the swift winds of chance. Sorrow and pleasure seem united in dance. Web of life, may this thread that I weave mingle compassion with all I believe. Mercy be my guide as I seek my way. Lead me into this tender day. Speak through me in all I do and say.
A reading. This is Parable of the Plants from the Lotus Sutra, a Buddhist text, as translated by Jean Reeves. The rain falls everywhere, coming down on all sides, flowing everywhere without limit, reaching over the face of the earth, into the hidden recesses of mountains, streams, and steep valleys, where plants and trees grow and medicinal herbs, big trees and small. 100 grains, rice seedlings, sugar cane, and grapevines are all moistened by the rain and abundantly enriched. The dry ground is soaked, and both herbs and trees flourish by the same water that comes from that cloud. Plants, trees, thickets, and forests, according to their need, receive moisture. All the trees, superior, middling, or inferior, each according to its size, can grow and develop. Roots, stems, branches, and leaves, blossoms and fruits in brilliant color. One rain goes to all. And all become bright and shiny, though their bodies, forms, and capacities may be large or small, the moisture they receive is the same, enabling each to flourish.
Knowing that Tony had experienced so much pain in his life, it was important to try to move the conversation to joy, to try to find if there had been any moment in Tony's life where he had been nurtured by the rain of love, where he had had a chance to smile and plant his roots. So, Tony, I say, can I ask you a question? Sure, why not, replies Tony. I have nothing better to do. Well, you mention a lot of pain and suffering, and I'm wondering what has brought you comfort and joy in life. There's a long pause. Tony seems to be processing the question, perhaps for the very first time. I'm not sure, to be honest, he says. Another pause. Tony ponders some more and begins tracing his palm, following the lines for saying, maybe music. I like music, and I like nature a lot. Yesterday, they let me listen to music, but today, when I asked, they said no. They said I'm not allowed to have music because it's a stimulant, and I don't need to be stimulated, but it calms me. Sometimes it's the only thing that does: music, nature, and rocking. What type of music do you listen to? I ask. All kinds of music, Tony shares, and I write my own when I can. That's really cool, Tony. What type of music do you write? And what's the focus of your music? Mostly about my pain and my life and the life I'd wish I lived. I see, Tony. And when you write music in this way, how does it make you feel? Is it somewhat better, or does it make you angry or sad thinking about all of those things? Music makes me feel better all of the time. You see, when I'm writing, Tony says, I'm not cutting. Tony shows me his arms, full of cut marks, and my heart hurts for him at that moment, as I remember those days in my own life. Deciding not to acknowledge the cuts directly, at least not verbally, I nod and place my hand over my heart, and Tony understands. His sharing was seen and heard. He smiles, even though his eyes show sadness and tears are rolling down his face. I'm glad music helps you feel more connected and at peace. Would you like to share more about the life you had wished you lived? I wish I could have been happy, he says. I wish I could have been happy. Tony is shaking, rocking, and crying. As our visit was coming to an end, Tony looked at me and said, you know, you get it, don't you? You really get it. Would you mind praying for me? He asked. But I'm unsure of how I feel about God, he says. Can we pray without God? He asked. That sounds so dumb, never mind. I know I said before, but there are those moments in chaplaincy where we feel we are called to that very space, to care for a very person. And Tony was one of those people. Serving in a hospital with all exclusively Christian chaplains. Being the only trans, non-binary chaplain, the only non-exclusively Christian chaplain, being the one who shows up to care for a trans, non-binary person who sometimes used he, him, or they, them pronouns. That question, can we pray without God? Does that sound dumb? I assured him that it didn't sound dumb at all, and asked him to whom he would like to pray, and his eyes lit up with joy. Great Spirit, he said with a smile, and it was clear in this moment that no one had ever cared enough for him to see his worth, to validate who he was, and to ask him such a seemingly simple question. He shared with me that his ancestors were Cherokee, that he had been adopted and cut off from his ancestors, from the village, from the roots that grounded his people, that if he had been invited to, lucky enough, privileged enough, that he would have received those blessings with and by Cherokee elders. I assured him that I was not Cherokee, that I did not have Cherokee roots nor ancestry, but that I was familiar with a place called the Mountain Retreat and Learning Center, a UU center, that I've had the opportunity to visit many times, where I've gone on a hike with a Cherokee elder who had said that you need not be Cherokee to pray to the Great Spirit. And I asked Tony if he would be okay with me, someone non-Cherokee, offering a prayer to the Great Spirit for him with the permission of an elder. For that elder gave permission that day, walking down the mountain trail. Tony said yes, and I offered a prayer in that moment, allowing the Great Spirit to wash over me, over him, out of my lips, into the room, and onto his heart. The prayer that I invite you into receiving is the same one I offered them then. It was not a prayer that was written down. It was not a prayer that I had heard. But it's a prayer that came out. As the Cherokee elder also said, when you ask Great Spirit to pray, they'll tell you, he'll tell you, and she'll tell you exactly what to say. So I invite you to receive this prayer, the prayer I offered Tony. Let it wash over you into the room, whatever room you're in, and on to your heart. Great and loving Spirit of the universe, source of all that is sacred, keeper of our earthly pain and giver of our strength and inspiration, be present in this room and our lives. Great Spirit, our lives have been filled with unrest sorrow-filled moments, moments that have left many feeling a deep sadness in our hearts, and have been the raging fire known to consume one's memory in the longing night. Great and loving Spirit, forget not your children who seek refuge in your loving embrace. Forget not your children who seek solace in the forest amidst the breeze and nestled among the mighty oak. Great and loving Spirit of the universe, bring peace, bring gifts of love that we long for. Remind us of our wealth and remove the pain we know all too well. May it be ever so, and blessings upon, and thank you, great Spirit. So chaplaincy, dear ones, is heart-wrenching. It is holy. It is beautiful, sacred, spiritual work. There are moments in each of our lives, whether serving as a chaplain or not, that we are called to provide care for someone in need. How we do it, how we provide a non-anxious, compassionate, loving presence in that moment that nurtures them, that provides them the nourishing brain that forms them, that sustains them and loves them into being. That's up to each of us. So, beloveds, may you go forward in that love. May you strive to see one another's worth and dignity, treating them as whole and hurting beings as each of us are. May we remember that as we do this task, that we seek glory in suffering. May we have the strength to persevere, to build character, to inspire hope in ourselves and in the lives of those we care for. For if it is not to be us, then who will it be? Ashe, and blessed, blessed be.
Let's join together in singing, shall we? Out of the Till hymn book, hymn number 1015, I Know I Can. I invite you to rise or sit, be however you want to sing, but let's sing together. Though days be dark
as you go on from this place, as our sacred flame is extinguished, know that you are held in love, that the warmth of this community surrounds you, that each of us bear witness to your journey, to your hope, to your love, to your loss, and to your pain, until we are together again.
Fiction.